So if you want to get involved in the real estate space, you have to know what completion guarantees are and net worth covenants. Now, that sounds all fancy and essentially it's jargon within the space. I can't stand jargon within industries because it makes it so much more complicated than it needs to be. So I really want to simplify this because it's something that you're going to have to deal with if you want to be a developer in the real estate space. And I get asked all the time, well, how do you get started as a developer? How do you get started in real estate? And there is no black and white answer, and one of the aspects of it though are relationships and constantly forming relationships. And you form relationships by walking into those relationships, not thinking about what you can get from the person, but what you can give. And, if you're first getting started, it can be difficult to try and to understand, well, what value can I actually bring? But you'd be surprised. There's a lot of value that you can provide. It may be just a commitment to learn. It might be someone sees potential in you based on the humility that you bring to the table, based on your approach, based on your work ethic. It could be based on the fact that you're in an area of the United States that is hot for real estate and somebody wants some boots on the ground. But I don't want to just talk about right now how to develop relationships. I want to explain to you these obstacles that you're going to come across, that your way out or your way over the obstacle is going to be the relationships you have. And that comes down to the net worth covenants and the completion guarantees. So if you want to get involved in ground up development of real estate, that means you are starting from the very beginning when it is a piece of ground and you want to be the developer. You want to be the person that when the project is completed, you've been responsible for essentially quarterbacking a building being built on that piece of land and having an income producing property. That means you've got a user in the building. That means you have tenants in the building and they're paying rent and they're providing a revenue stream. Well, in order to get there, you're going to have to get a loan from the lender. And when you go get these loans from the lender, oftentimes, just about every single time, you are going to have to give a completion guarantee. That means you are putting your personal assets on the line to ensure that the building gets built. Now, this is something that's very common, and there's a lot of ways that you can get around the risk of ultimately the completion guarantee. And so let's just talk about that real quickly. What it actually means is that if you go in to get a loan for a project, the lender gives you the loan and you start the development of, let's call it an industrial warehouse, and the building ends up not being completed. Ultimately, in the worst case situation, the lender can come after you for essentially the proceeds that they were loaning you to develop that building. And they can come after you ultimately for the cost, the overall cost of getting that building developed. But here's the reality with that. For that to happen, there are so many things that would have to fail. And there's so many things that you can do to avoid that from happening. First of all, if for some reason the building isn't getting built, well, what would have to happen for the building to not get built? Well, your general contractor would need to walk away from the project. Well, what could cause a general contractor to walk away from the project? I guess you not paying the invoices along the way. Well, if you have a loan in place, that shouldn't occur, right? So the only way a general contractor is going to walk away is if there's some kind of dispute, right? Or if there's some sort of act from God, like a natural disaster where the building can't get built anymore. Well, you're covered on natural disaster because there's a concept called force majeure, but for acts of God, meaning if the project is stopped because of a terrible earthquake or a tornado or a hurricane or something like that, you're not liable. You're covered under that. And you would negotiate that within your loan documents. So the reality is, we can come up with scenarios of what's going to stop the project, but oftentimes it's going to be a conflict with your contractor. And you're in control of that because you can ultimately negotiate and work that out. And so the other aspect with that is, let's say your contractor did walk from the project. You have a cure period. You have a period of time where you can go out and get another contractor to step in and get this building completed. Additionally, you can get a bond on the building that can essentially cover for these type of situations. And on top of that, oftentimes, most of the time, that contractor is going to guarantee the completion of the building as well. So yes, it's a risk, but it's one that when you look at the risk reward and you look at how you can mitigate that risk, it's one that's essentially every developer takes within the real estate space. The more difficult obstacle are the net worth covenants. Sure, the lender is going to have you guarantee the completion of the building. But if you don't have any money to your name and you don't have any assets, what's that completion guarantee to the lender? So the lender is going to demand that you have a certain net worth, that you have a certain liquidity, that you have a certain amount of assets at a certain value, and it's going to all depend on the cost of your project. Now, let me help you here. You may think, well, that's a problem that I have, but someone like myself doesn't have that problem, or someone like our company doesn't have that problem. Well, let me tell you, there's always a deal that can be too big for anybody out there. You could have a $15 billion project, and there are $15 billion projects right now, particularly in the data center space. But there's those type of projects that happen. And a net worth covenant to cover a $15 billion project is going to be significant. And so there are going to be companies that aren't able to provide that kind of net worth. If you have a project that's $1 million to get the thing built, you may be an individual where you can't cover it. Well, there are ways around this. And the way you get around it is through relationships. You can bring someone into your project, someone that has a bigger net worth than you, someone that has a deeper pocket, we like to say. And you can have them guarantee the project. Now, the bank oftentimes is going to require that person to be part of the ownership structure, to have say, to have decision making. So it's going to be someone that you're going to need to have a relationship with, that you can trust, that you want to bring into the project and bring them in on the ownership side. And what you do when you bring them in on the ownership side is you're going to have to give them a piece of the action. It may be you give them some ownership in the project. Perhaps you give them a dollar amount off the top, meaning when the deal makes its first profit, before you put anything in your pocket, you may give a certain portion of dollars to that person that is coming in and providing a net worth statement so that you can get the completion guarantee so that you can get the loan. So whether it's a flat dollar amount off the top, and we would call that, by the way, preferred interest, because his or her interest is preferred before yours, meaning their interest comes first. So whether it's a flat dollar amount, or maybe it's just a percentage of the deal, or perhaps it's a combination of the two. It may be they're getting a percentage of the deal and their portion of the deal is coming out first. They have a preferred interest, but all that can be negotiated. There's also fees. Sometimes within a deal, you can work in a debt fee. If you have a broker that's helping you source the debt, you're going to have to pay that broker a fee, correct? Well, oftentimes you may not have a broker and you might just have a relationship with the lender, and you are able to do the loan with the lender due to your relationship and you didn't need a broker. But that doesn't mean you still can't have a debt fee within your pro forma. And so if you have a debt fee within your pro forma, perhaps you can pay this individual a portion of your debt fee. So there's ways that you can get around this, where when you're first starting in the real estate space, if you have a deal that is attractive, if you know your deal inside and out, you can get this done. And the same principles apply to bringing in a partner to help you with your net worth guarantee for the net worth covenant with the loan. the same principles apply to that person as they would bringing in a partner that's a limited partner that's going to write you a big check for the equity, like institutional capital partners. And what are those principles? Well, you've got to know your deal inside and out. You have to prove to whoever you're going to that you have a command of this real estate. And how do you do that? You build up trust. How do you build up trust? One of the easiest ways to do it, I always say, after you've built up rapport and after you have a relationship, talk about the issues with the deal first. And I'll tell you why. When you lead with talking about the problems, it doesn't just show that you can be trusted, that you're genuine, that you're authentic, but it also provides you an opportunity to show your value and to show your knowledge without essentially talking about how great you are. And you do that by when you show or present the problem first, and then talk about the solution that you have to the problem, you're covering two things. You're covering the trust part, but you're also covering your knowledge. See, you're solving the problem, but you're the one bringing the problem up. We always say to our teammates and to ourselves, think about the questions that that client or that partner is going to ask before they ask them. Put yourself in their shoes. When you do that, when you think about those questions and you bring them up first and then you answer those questions for them, you've showed your expertise. You showed you're someone that can be trusted. You show you're someone that cares. You show you're someone that goes the extra mile, because it takes a lot of thought to be able to forecast those questions of your partner or client before they even ask them. And you know what else that does? That allows your partner and your client or your client to be seen. It's like, man, this guy gets it. This person gets what my concerns are. So on top of building up trust, showing your expertise through solving the problem and presenting the problem first and then solving it, you also have to have a good real estate deal. The fundamentals of the deal need to make sense. Start with location. Is your location that somebody wants to be in? Can it support the deal that you're looking to develop? Then go to your basis. You're going in price for the land. Is it within market or even below market? Your basis and your location is everything. If you have a below market basis, or at least within market basis, and you're in a great location, that's the start of a great deal. So the fundamentals of the deal need to make sense. You have to have a command of the numbers. I always say the most important numbers to talk about is your yield on cost, which is simply all of your expenses and all of your revenue. Your revenue divided by your expenses will give you your yield on cost. You look at your yield on cost and you compare that to what market is for your asset. If you're developing a deal and your yield on cost is a 7%, that ultimately means if that entire deal was paid in cash, it would make 7% on the money. If the cap rate in that market is at 5%, which simply means if somebody bought that deal all cash, they'd make 5% on their money, and your yield is a 7, you have a 200 basis point swing between yield on cost and cap. You always want your yield on cost to be above what market is. But know your numbers. Be able to talk about them. And then have a great team. If you're an individual, no problem. Have the right civil engineer. Have a great builder. Have a great lawyer. Have a great broker that's going to be the one leasing it up. Maybe you are the broker, but have a great team. And when it comes to development, have a great relationship with the city. Make sure you've met with them. Make sure you've sat in front of the decision makers, the city planner. Make sure you have a feel for the council members. Make sure you have a relationship with the mayor. These are all factors that are important to presenting your deal in a way where someone wants to be a part of it. And if you can do that, it's not going to be difficult to bring somebody in to take care of the net worth covenant requirement for that loan. And another thing you can do, there's a lot of things you can do with that person in your negotiations. You can indemnify them. You can have a side agreement with that individual where certain profits from the deal, if things go south, go to them before they go to you. Now, if things go south, there probably won't be much profit. But my point is that if a lender isn't going to accept what you have in liquidity, what your net worth is, You can still work something out on the side with this individual that you're bringing in. Maybe you give them interest in another deal that you're working on. Maybe you have another piece of ground that you have under contract that you haven't started yet, where you say, hey, I'm going to give you a couple free points on this deal if it takes off and going. You can do these side agreements with the individual. But if you want to just look at this black and white, you're going to probably give them a piece of the deal. You're probably going to give him some profit off the top that comes to that individual first before it comes to you. But if you've got a deal and the individual trusts you and believes in the opportunity, you're going to not have a problem getting somebody in. And that is why relationships are so important. When you start in our space, you've got to develop relationships with people that have something that you don't. And that might just mean someone that's got financial means that you don't have, but you're going to have something they don't have, which is an expertise in real estate. You know, this is how my father got started. Our dad started our company 70 years ago, and he had very humble beginnings. Didn't have much money, if anything, but he had everything that I'm talking about. He was trustworthy. He was honest. He had a work ethic. He knew his real estate inside and out, and he knew his numbers right here. He didn't have to whip up a pro forma and talk about the numbers. He didn't have to pull out a calculator. I'll digress quickly. We often say to our guys when they come and they present deals to us in investment committee, I'll say, have a conversation with me. I don't want you to pull up the computer screen when I ask you a question on the numbers. Have a conversation. Let's talk big picture. If we need to get into the weeds and the details, I get pulling up the pro forma. But if you can't have a conversation with the numbers, you don't know your numbers enough. My father could do that. And so his first development deal was an out parcel. I think it was about a 12 to 15,000 square foot strip center. He didn't have the money. He brought a partner in, a friend that he had developed a relationship with. That friend of his was a very wealthy guy, but also his good buddy. And he went to him and he said, I don't have any money, but I got a great deal. You fund it, I'll get it done, and let's split the profits 50-50. That's what they did. I'll tell you another thing about that. When it comes to deals and structures, don't outfox yourself. Don't try to get too cute with the negotiations. You know, I said a few things there about preferred interest and different things, but keep it simple. The most simple deals are the best deals. And so I hope this helps you if you're getting started in the space. Anybody can do it. If you're trustworthy, you do some of these things I said, especially leading with the problem first, you know your numbers, you know your deal, and you work on developing these relationships now. You may not need them for several years, but develop them now. And when you're walking into those relationships, think about what you can provide. And if you're a young person and you're aggressive and you see opportunities and you've got an eye for real estate, that in and of itself is a value to somebody that has some wealth, that wants to get into the real estate world. So don't underestimate yourself. You've got more value than you think.